Welcome to British Accent Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast where we break down the challenges of learning English and help you find the best ways to improve. I'm Emma, and today we're talking about something many of us experience while learning English feels harder as an adult.
That's right. If you've ever thought, why does English seem so much easier for kids? Or why do I struggle to remember words and grammar rules? You are not alone. Today, we're diving into the science behind language learning, the differences between kids and adults, and how you can make progress despite these challenges.
So, if you've ever felt frustrated with your learning journey, stick with us. Let's get into it.
One of the biggest reasons learning English feels harder as an adult is that our brains process language differently compared to when we were kids. When children learn a language, their brains are more flexible, almost like sponges, absorbing sounds, structures, and even accents effortlessly.
Exactly. Kids pick up language naturally through immersion. They don't sit down and study grammar rules. They just listen, repeat, and eventually start forming sentences. But as adults, we rely more on logic and structured learning, which can slow us down.
Another challenge is that adults have more responsibilities. Work, family, stress, these things take up mental energy, leaving us with less time and focus for language learning.
And let's not forget the fear of making mistakes. Kids don't worry about saying something wrong, they just go for it. But as adults, we become self-conscious, which can make us hesitate when speaking English.
That's such a huge factor. Many learners hold themselves back because they're afraid of sounding silly. But the truth is, mistakes are part of the process. The more you speak, the more confident you will become.
So, what can we do to overcome these challenges? First, try to create an immersive environment, listen to English podcasts, watch movies, and surround yourself with the language as much as possible.
Yes, and don't just consume English, use it actively. Speak out loud, even if you're alone. Try shadowing exercises, where you repeat after native speakers.
Also, find a learning method that works for you. Some people prefer structured lessons, while others learn best through conversation. Experiment and see what keeps you motivated.
And most importantly, be patient with yourself. Learning a language as an adult might take more effort, but it's absolutely possible. Keep going, and you'll see progress.
That's such a good point. Being patient with yourself is key. A lot of learners expect fast results, but language learning is a journey, not a race.
Right. And one thing that really helps is setting small, achievable goals. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent, which can feel overwhelming, try something like, I want to learn 5 new phrases this week. I will practice speaking for 10 minutes every day.
Yes, small wins keep you motivated. And another tip, don't just focus on grammar. A lot of learners get stuck trying to perfect their sentences before they even speak. But in real life, communication is what matters most.
Absolutely. Think about it when kids learn their first language. They don't worry about grammar rules. They just talk. If you wait until you know everything perfectly, you might never start speaking.
Exactly. Instead of worrying about being perfect, aim to be understood. Even if you make mistakes, native speakers will usually get what you mean, and honestly, they appreciate the effort.
That's so true. And if you ever feel frustrated, remember every single English speaker was once a learner too. Even native speakers had to learn their first words step by step.
Yes, so don't be too hard on yourself. Keep practicing, have fun with it, and trust that with time, speaking English will feel easier and more natural.
Another thing that helps is making English part of your daily life. If you only study for 1 hour a week, progress will be slow. But if you find little ways to practice every day, like thinking in English, listening to podcasts, or even changing your phone's language settings, you'll improve much faster.
Yes, immersion doesn't mean you have to live in an English-speaking country. You can create an English environment wherever you are. Surround yourself with the language in different ways, watch movies, follow English-speaking influencers, or even label things around your house in English.
And don't forget the power of repetition. When you hear the same phrases over and over again, they start to feel natural. That's why things like watching the same show multiple times or shadowing native speakers can be really effective.
Oh, shadowing is a great technique. You listen to a sentence and repeat it right after, trying to match the speaker's tone and rhythm. It helps with pronunciation and confidence.
Exactly. It's like training your brain and mouth to work together in English. And the best part, You don't need a conversation partner to do it. You can practice anytime, anywhere.
Speaking of confidence, another thing that helps is celebrating your progress. Too many learners focus on what they can't do yet instead of recognizing how far they've come.
That's so true. Think about it. If you can understand this podcast, you've already made amazing progress. That's something to be proud of.
Right, and instead of stressing about sounding perfect, focus on communication. Even native speakers make mistakes, but they don't let that stop them from speaking.
Exactly. The goal is to express yourself, not to be flawless. Plus, mistakes are actually a good thing. They show that you're learning and pushing your limits.
That's a great mindset to have. And if you ever feel frustrated, remind yourself why you started learning English in the first place. Reconnecting with your motivation can keep you going when things feel tough.
That's a great point. Whether it's for travel, career opportunities, or making new friends, keeping your why in mind makes the journey more enjoyable.
And remember, learning English is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Absolutely. And one of the best ways to keep progressing is to make English a natural part of your daily routine. That way, you're always improving without even realizing it.
Yes, try watching movies, listening to music, or even thinking in English. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more comfortable it will feel.
And if you can, speak out loud even if you're alone. Practicing speaking regularly helps build confidence and makes forming sentences easier over time.
Definitely. Also, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Join conversations online, write in English, or even find a language partner to practice with.
The key is consistency. Small efforts every day add up to big progress in the long run.
And don't forget, mistakes are part of the process. The more mistakes you make, the more you learn. It's all about progress, not perfection.
That's a great point. A lot of people get stuck because they're afraid of sounding wrong. But if you never speak, you never improve. Just go for it.
Exactly. Think about how kids learn languages. They don't stress about grammar rules or making mistakes. They just speak and pick things up naturally over time.
Right. And as adults, we can do the same by immersing ourselves in English. The more exposure we have, the easier it becomes.
So, if you're feeling stuck or frustrated, just remind yourself that every little step counts. Keep going, and eventually, speaking English will feel natural.
And another thing, don't compare yourself to others. Everyone learns at their own pace. Just because someone else seems to pick up English faster doesn't mean you are not making progress.
That's so important. Comparison can be really discouraging. Instead of focusing on how far you have to go, look at how far you've already come. Maybe a year ago, you couldn't understand a full conversation in English, and now you can.
Exactly. Celebrate the small wins. Every new word you learn, every conversation you have, it all adds up.
And speaking of small wins, a great way to keep yourself motivated is to track your progress. Keep a journal, record yourself speaking, or even set little challenges like learning 5 new words a day.
That's a great tip. Tracking progress makes it easier to see improvement over time. Plus, it keeps you motivated to push forward.
Another thing that helps, surrounding yourself with English. If you make English a part of your daily routine, it won't feel like a chore, it'll just be a natural part of your life.
Absolutely. The more you integrate English into your daily life, the more natural it becomes. Try switching your phone's language to English, listening to English podcasts, or even thinking in English when you're doing everyday tasks.
Oh, thinking in English is a big one. At first, it's tough because your brain wants to translate everything, but the more you practice, the easier it gets.
Yeah, and a fun way to practice thinking in English is to narrate your day. Like, when you're cooking, describe what you're doing in English. Now, I'm chopping onions. Next, I'm adding some salt. It sounds silly, but it really helps.
I love that idea. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud, you can write it down instead. Keeping a daily journal in English can be a great way to improve your sentence structure and vocabulary.
Exactly. And don't stress about making mistakes. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. The more you make, the faster you improve.
That's such an important point. A lot of adults learning English feel embarrassed about mistakes, but honestly, mistakes mean you're learning. If you never make mistakes, you're probably not challenging yourself enough.
Right. And think about how kids learn a language. They make tons of mistakes, but they don't overthink it. They just keep going, and eventually, they get better. That's the mindset we need to have as adult learners too.
That's why speaking regularly is so important. Even if you don't have a conversation partner, you can talk to yourself, practice shadowing native speakers, or even record your voice and listen back to it.
Yeah, and the more you hear yourself speaking English, the more natural it feels. It's all about building confidence and getting comfortable with the language in real-life situations.
And don't forget, having fun with the process makes a huge difference. If you enjoy what you're learning, you'll stay motivated and improve faster.
Exactly. If you make learning enjoyable, it won't feel like a chore. Try watching movies, listening to podcasts, or even playing games in English. The more natural exposure you get, the more confident you'll feel when speaking.
Another thing that helps is focusing on communication rather than perfection. A lot of learners get stuck because they're worrying about grammar too much. But think about it: when you talk to a native speaker, they care more about understanding you than whether you use the past perfect correctly.
That's so true. Fluency comes from practice, not from knowing every single grammar rule. It's better to say something imperfectly than to say nothing at all because you're scared of making a mistake.
Exactly. And if you keep practicing every day, even in small ways, you'll see progress. The key is to stay consistent and keep pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
One more thing that really helps is thinking in English as much as possible. If you're always translating in your head, it slows you down. Try to describe things around you in English, or even have little conversations with yourself.
Yes, that's a great habit. Another trick is using English in daily tasks. For example, if you write a to-do list, make it in English. If you look up a recipe, find it in English. The more you integrate English into your routine, the more natural it will feel.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. A lot of learners hesitate because they don't want to sound wrong. But the truth is, mistakes are part of the learning process. The more mistakes you make, the faster you improve.
Absolutely. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. The most important thing is to keep going and not let fear stop you from practicing.
Right. And speaking of practice, another good way to make learning easier is by surrounding yourself with the language. Watch TV shows, listen to podcasts, read books. Just make sure you're getting lots of English input every day.
Yeah, and mix it up. If you only watch movies, for example, you might get good at understanding conversations but struggle with formal writing. Try a little bit of everything: news articles, YouTube videos, even social media posts.
And if you can, interact with real people. Even if you don't have native English speakers around, you can join online communities, comment on posts, or even find a language exchange partner. The more you use English in real situations, the better.
Exactly. Learning as an adult can feel harder, but it's also exciting because you can take control of your learning. The key is to stay consistent and find methods that work for you.
And another thing, don't get too caught up in perfection. A lot of adults hesitate to speak because they're afraid of making mistakes. But mistakes are actually a sign that you're learning.
Yes, no one expects you to be perfect, especially not at the beginning. Think about kids: they make tons of mistakes when they're learning a language, but they don't let that stop them. They just keep talking, and eventually they get better.
That's a great point. Adults sometimes overthink everything, which can make learning feel overwhelming. But if you just keep practicing, little by little, you'll see progress over time.
Right, and don't forget to make learning fun. If you enjoy the process, you'll stay motivated for the long run.
Exactly. And one way to make learning fun is by connecting it to things you already enjoy. If you love watching movies, try watching them in English with subtitles. If you're into music, learn the lyrics to your favorite English songs.
Yes, the more you make English part of your daily life, the more natural it will feel. And don't be afraid to talk to yourself in English. It might feel silly at first, but it's a great way to get comfortable forming sentences.
Absolutely. Narrating what you're doing or thinking in English can help your brain get used to processing the language without translating. Over time, you will start thinking in English without even realizing it.
And another tip: find a language partner or join an online community. Talking to real people makes learning more interactive and helps you build confidence.
Exactly. And when you're speaking with someone, don't stress about making mistakes. Mistakes are a natural part of learning, and they actually help you improve.
That's a great point. People often get stuck because they're afraid of saying something wrong. But think about how kids learn. They don't worry about grammar or pronunciation, they just talk.
Right, and they learn fast because they're not overthinking it. So, instead of worrying about perfection, focus on communicating your message. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel.
And don't forget to reward yourself. Learning a language is a long journey, so celebrate the small wins, whether it's understanding a full conversation, writing a message without using a translator, or just feeling more confident when speaking.
Yes, progress takes time, but if you stay consistent and keep it fun, you'll get there. Keep challenging yourself, but also enjoy the process.
Another thing that really helps is surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. Listen to English podcasts, watch movies without subtitles, and try to think in English throughout your day.
That's a game changer. When your brain gets used to English in different situations, it becomes easier to switch into English mode when you need to speak.
Exactly, and if you can, find a language partner or join a conversation group. Speaking regularly with real people makes a huge difference.
Totally. And don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Order food in English, ask for directions, or even talk to yourself. It all helps.
Oh, I love that tip. Talking to yourself in English, even if it feels silly, actually builds confidence.
Absolutely. The more you use English in your daily life, the less intimidating it becomes.
So, to wrap things up, if learning English feels harder as an adult, don't be discouraged. It's normal. But with the right mindset, consistent practice, and the willingness to step outside your comfort zone, you can definitely make progress.
Exactly. Remember, progress might feel slow sometimes, but every little step counts. Keep exposing yourself to English, practice thinking in English, and most importantly, enjoy the journey.
That's right. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little motivation.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on British Accent Podcast.
Bye for now. Keep practicing and keep learning.
Bye.
Bye.